So I spent a good amount of time reviewing the comments on the channel. A lot of times it's you guys giving me tips on my fish keeping hobby and stuff, so I appreciate you guys. Honestly, there's a lot of tips that I've taken in from you guys, and it helped me a lot. So again, thank you guys, appreciate it. And then after that, there was people asking me for tips. I'm not like a professional or anything. I just record my stuff and put it on YouTube, and hope you guys enjoy it. But there's a lot of people that ask me questions. One in particular is something that I've been planning on doing for a while, and this is related to doing maintenance on my tank. Now your aquarium might not be the same as mine, but I just want to give you guys an overall example of the things that I do and how I do them. So the first thing I do is I immediately start the siphon, because I'm using one hose to clear out this whole tank, this whole system, and it takes a long time. This water is not going to waste. I drain them into these rain barrels just so that we can use this water to water the crops and the plants and stuff around the house. I change a lot of water, maybe around 120 to 150 gallons a week, just between all of the tanks. And yeah, that's a lot of water wasted. So if you can use that even after you water change, that's good. You may be wondering what that bottle thing is. That thing is just there so like when I'm flowing water out of the aquarium, no fish can get sucked or pressed up against the hose and cause like a jam or damage themselves. That bottle is there just to prevent things like that from happening. So the next thing I do is I go ahead and unplug my 2 heaters. I don't want to forget about these later and have them dry out and burn out. It's not a good look. I'd rather just unplug them now. For the water pump in the sump, I don't turn that off until maybe about halfway, and the reason for this is I need the water to go from full to half in the sump so I can go in there and get rid of all the floating plants. Not all of it, but I clear out enough just so they can grow back. If they fully populate, they're going to suffocate the plants underneath, and there's going to be no room for the top floating plants to grow. So I just want to clear some out so it can grow, clear it out, grow, and it'll just be a consistent cycle. And the next reason why I drain the sump halfway is because of my K1 system. I'll go ahead and explain this later, but just keep this in mind. Now, the reason why I drain it halfway is related to my K1. One of the things that I do for this tank is I disturb the substrate. There's nitrate bubbles that build up at the bottom of your substrate if you have a really deep sand bed or something. If it's not disturbed, it's just going to continue to build. So what I do is I just drive my net all the way in the substrate, disturb that, release all those gas pockets and stuff while I'm doing the water change. This is something that I've been taught for a while now, and I've just always been doing it. And yeah, man, just disturb your substrate so nothing bad happens. I've heard that the bubbles are kind of toxic for your fish, like it's like gas and stuff. So I'd rather just release it controllably than having it cause issues later. But the thing is, I have a lot of Bashirs in this tank. I technically don't have to do this, but I do it anyways, just to kind of stir the substrate up. The next thing I do is I go ahead and clean the bulkhead area. So in the bulkhead area, I have this netting around it. It used to be really clean with uniform lines, but I went ahead and cut bigger holes because my fish got bigger, so they technically can't go through. I just cut them bigger so the things can't get super clogged. I'll go in there with the toothbrush and I'll just go ahead and just clean this whole thing up. Kind of a simple thing. People that have bulkheads know that if you want to make sure that your aquarium is foolproof, make sure those bulkheads are extremely clean. Now, when it comes to like cleaning off your glass, I don't really do that too much with this tank because this tank is connected to a sump. And in my sump, I let algae grow like crazy. I let algae grow, plants grow, and I keep the light on in the sump for a very long time compared to the actual tank itself. I think the tank turns on around 6 p.m. and it turns off around 10. When compared to the sump, I think the sump's on for about like 9 hours. The sump's on for a very long time. And this is because I have a lot of plants in there. The wolf has a lot of cover, so he's not super affected by it. I just let algae grow in there like crazy because I also have shrimp in there as well. As long as I have certain things that consume nitrates for the system in that sump, I'm good. And on top of that, it's helping me keep algae away from the main tank and having it focused on the sump itself. I have some neorite snails in the main tank that help keep the tank spotless. Even though the amount of algae they eat isn't comparable to things like a pleco or a flagtail, these snails don't attack my Bashirs. My Bashirs don't mess with them. The neorite snails even go into the substrate and clean stuff in there too, which is awesome. So I think that's pretty much it when it comes to the main tank. I don't really do much to the plants and stuff. I'm just letting it grow. And the reason why some of them look like the way that they are is because they came from my sump, where they were like overgrown with algae and stuff. Now that I put them into the main tank, they're not getting the amount of light that they used to get in the sump. All of the algae is kind of flaking off. I'm letting them kind of like recover in the main tank. And yeah, man, it is what it is. Now you may be thinking why I don't do like the siphoning and stuff for my Bashir tank. I just don't. Ever since I added in this geo, I never really had to siphon anymore. It was cleaning up everything from the corners. You may see a little bit of detritus, but this kind of comes from like a very long time. I haven't siphoned in this aquarium ever since I had that crazy snail outburst. When I had those snail infestation, that's when I had the most detritus. But nowadays, I don't really siphon at all. So right when the sump is drained to the correct amount, I'll go ahead and reach down under my tank. I have a little switch that kind of like powers my sump pump. This is a lot easier than plugging and unplugging it into like the extender outlet thing because it's just way back there. It's just easier to hit a switch to turn it on and off. So the first thing I do, like I mentioned, is I'll go ahead and clear out a lot of the floating plants. If I just leave these plants the way they are and just let them fully overgrow the top, they're not going to have room to grow more leaves. So in turn, they're not going to be intaking as much nitrate as they could. So what I try to do is I'll go ahead and scoop out about half these plants or maybe even a quarter, and I'll feed it to my goldfish up top because my goldfish love eating this type of stuff like duckweed, frog's bit. And then with the area left open, these plants will just continue to grow, and I'll just do it over and over again. On top of that, I'm giving the plants at the bottom a chance to survive and the chance to kind of like absorb light. And again, like I said, if these plants were to overtake the surface, the plants at the bottom won't have a chance at all. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the sump. I don't really do too much more. Yeah, it's just a whole bunch of plants in here, my shrimp, and the wolf is just chilling, so he's fine. So now that the aquarium is drained, let's go ahead and fill this tank. So when it comes to filling up my aquarium, I use a long garden hose. I connect it to the sink that's inside of the house, and I run it all the way to the tank. And the reason why I do this is because I'm not trying to use buckets and stuff. And then from there, I go ahead and add a little temperature probe so I can see the temperature that's coming from the sink to the tank. And I want to make sure that it's not super hot or super cold. This way the fish don't go into shock. There is different ways that you can mount the temperature probe, but the bottle's already here to prevent fish from getting sucked into the tube. I might as well just use it to hold the temperature probe. So this is the reason why the bottle is really important when it comes to using the hose to fill my aquariums. And yeah, man, it serves two purposes in this whole process. Towards the beginning of the video, I was mentioning that I wanted to drain the sump about halfway, and this is the reason why. The amount of water that rushes from the main tank to the sump, this causes a crazy typhoon in the K1 chamber, and this gets rid of detritus buildup, dirty things that cling onto the K1 itself. And it's kind of like flushing out my system. So while it's filling up my tank and my sump, I'm using this opportunity to clean out the K1 chamber so there's no buildup of detritus and all that junk. So now that we're filling the aquarium up with temperature matched water, I'm adding the water conditioner now, and I use Seachem Safe for all of my tanks because it's way cheaper than Seachem Prime. Powdered form, it'll last a very long time. If you guys are using Seachem Prime on a small tank, I would just continue doing that. But if you guys have like a 50 gallon or bigger or 40 gallon or bigger, I would consider using Seachem Safe because you're just gonna save a lot of money, man. Honestly, when I was using Seachem Prime, I was going through bottles and bottles and bottles, but when I switched over to Seachem Safe, this little jar right here can last me for a very long time for all of my aquariums. I usually monitor my aquariums for about 20 minutes after water change to make sure my fish are reacting correctly and all my equipment is working and stuff. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I wanted to spend some time to thank John, who commented on my other video asking me for this topic right here and giving me the idea to make this video. So John, I appreciate you. If you guys have any questions, tips, concerns, comments, and all that stuff, leave it down in the comments below. So that's it for today's video. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next one, and peace, guys.